So I'm going to try to take this bullet by bullet. So this is essentially a Saudi-funded golf group that has partnered with the Asian Tour, which is strategic, that Greg Norman is going to be the commissioner of. And it is certainly well-funded, and they are looking at a runway of 10 years, and they're willing to put multiple hundreds of millions of dollars into this.
They're definitely throwing a lot of money at it. I kind of, from everything that I've read and all the speculation that there was, and I know there's been some groups and different ideas that have been thrown around, and there's been some splits and some complications. But what we've ultimately received so far is a little bit, there's not much to it to me. I mean, this reminds me very much of, say, the Rolex series on the European Tour, where you have a different tour that's not the PGA Tour, and there are some elevated status events on that tour. And so I'm very curious to see what how the details roll in, because our biggest concern has been, are PGA Tour stars going to choose this new tour over the PGA Tour? Well, this is just simply the Asian Tour. So do PGA Tour players really want to go play the Asian Tour instead? I don't think that's what we're going to get. And one of the biggest points that I read was that there aren't any events in the US. They're in Europe and Asia, at least as of now. So we'll see how all that plays out. We'll see how the PGA Tour handles the releases. We'll see how the schedules line up. But I have a really hard time seeing a huge problem for the PGA Tour at this point.
The partnership with the Asian Tour, Mark, is very strategic, because in theory, if you did nab some of the top players in the world, the Asian Tour is an officially sanctioned OWGR tour. They could continue to earn world ranking points. That was one of the questions we talked about, 6 months ago, is if a new tour starts, do they have to go through the process of getting OWGR points? And that stuff kind of influences how they get into major championships and other events. So this is very strategic to kind of become an arm of the Asian Tour.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I think, well, two things. The point I wanted to make was, this is, if anyone was going to do this and become the commissioner, it would have been Greg Norman, because he tussled with Tim Fincham back in the day to try and start the World Tour, and that didn't work out. So I don't know if there was an axe to grind, but, being the kind of guy that Norman is, he's an achiever. And so I'm sure when this idea was tossed out there, he would have bitten at the thing, pardon the pun. But with the Asian Tour, now with the European Tour and the PGA Tour kind of amalgamating, for lack of a better word, the Asian Tour, I'm sure, was looking for a little punch. And when money gets thrown at you like this, you can create bigger purses. I don't know how the thing's going to transpire to fall in behind Greg's observation. But yeah, the Asian Tour is an official tour. I'm sure they're looking to build their brand. Who wouldn't? And Greg Norman is a major player in the golf industry. He still is. And obviously money talks. And so as far as I'm concerned, I'm not too sure what the future holds, but it seemed like a likely combination if this thing was going to happen. And you sort of got two sides of the globe working now in opposition to each other. So I watch the presses. I'm keen to see how this whole thing pans out.
Well-funded and coming soon, KP. Greg Norman seemingly going to step down as the CEO of his company, the Greg Norman Company, and he is going to be full-time in this arena. And we're expected to see this start up as early as next year. I mean, we are, a month away, 2 months away from 2022. It feels wild, but like we are going to start to see seemingly this in action very shortly.
Yeah, I think I have confusion over it. So it's this whole how did we pronounce it? Do we decide?
Okay.
We had a lot of consternation about this.
This organization it's LIV in all caps, LIV Golf Investments. That is the Saudi based, entity that is putting this on. I would argue it's live. It might be live. Or it could be Roman numerals as we went down the rabbit hole.
That's the one right there. So I guess we'll call it live. I don't know. We'll call it LIV. How about that?
Yeah. Good.
This LIV Investments thing is the only, and I'm legitimately asking because I don't know, is the only reason that they're partnering with the Asian Tour for the OWGR points? Like, is that it right there? Like, is that the primary thing?
I think it's
Well,
got to be the most logical thing.
Yeah.
That's a huge step, but it gives you structure. It gives you players. You have an immediate place to get players from. So all the guys that qualify for the Asian Tour, you can fill fields, and now you're not completely reliant on picking off players from other tours. So it does limit a little bit of pressure, in my opinion, and that's why they did it. They have taken a lot of the steps that are groundwork on to set up a tour are already taken. So that's what I think, even beyond the official World Golf Ranking points.
So two things real quick, and Mark has said this before, and I agree with it. It's like, okay, could this happen? Like, could this blow up the PGA Tour and the European Tour and all this different stuff? Sure, it could. But like, when is something real going to happen? Like, okay, Greg Norman gets named the CEO. That's not as meaningful as even getting like Victor Hovland to be in your, or whoever. I'm just throwing a top 20 guy out there to be in your league. Like if you come out and say, hey, we got Finau, we got Hovland, we got John Rahm, I'm like, oh wow, okay, this is like this. There's like something happening here. If you just name the CEO of an organization, okay, like what is like what's net? Like what am I supposed to do with that? You know, and it's not nothing, but I feel like it's just been it's sort of the apex of what's been happening for the last year, which is just a bunch of chatter and talk, and maybe there's fire behind that smoke, like the smoke that we've seen, but I want to actually see the fire at some point, you know, and maybe that's coming. I've talked to some people that believe that it is coming, but I think the other point, and Greg hit on it right there, is like, what if you don't need Hovland and Finau and John Rahm? What if what you're trying to do is just to identify the next Hideki or the next KJ Choi or whoever from Asia and make that? I mean, because think about like the market in Asia and China, Japan, like all these different places. It's massive, and like maybe you don't need the 14th best guy in the United States to even be in your league. Like maybe that's part of kind of the strategy behind this. I don't know that. I'm just throwing that out there as a potential idea for kind of what's unfolding here.
So would you see that as like a coexistence? Sorry, Mark.
No worries.
Like just you have the tour in Asia and Europe and maybe other parts of the world. This is the top tour, and on the PGA Tour in the United States, we have all of our remaining markets and stars and players, and some of the new guys maybe have a choice at that point.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, and maybe the draw for the next Hideki or whoever. I'm just throwing. He's the best in Asia ever, as Rick and I kind of went through.
We found out.
Maybe the pull is not in the future for him to come to the PGA Tour because the Asian Tour and how, you know, however this plays out is big enough to kind of, you know, pull him in there. I don't know. I'm kind of grasping at straws because I just don't really understand like how this is going to go.
Hey, Rick, I want to add something, and then I want to get your take. Here's the way I see it panning out, because I'm along with Kyle. It's all just, well, we've got a CEO, we're promising a whole bunch of money. Now, watch out, here we come. And I'm like, you're trying to cast a big shadow, but there isn't really anything yet. But here's the thing with the alignment with the Asian Tour. I would not be at all surprised if they just suddenly name 10 events on the Asian Tour schedule and go, these are big cash events now.
Yeah.
We draw points. Now we're going to try and get some guys to get waivers from the tour to come, because here's what Carl says has a lot of merit in terms of just creating another tour. But since the year dot, I mean, when my brother was playing full time, they got a lot of money to go and play in Japan. Even when Jumbo Ozaki and all these sorts of guys were stars over there, when you bring an international over, like a Masters champion, like Trevor was, this pulls crowds. We've seen that with Zozo. And so I don't think the tour can stand alone. I think they have to get some of the American folks or the Euros or whoever it is to come over there and lend some gravitas to this thing. and to the attraction of those players. I think that's where, or the reason why they might have named Norman, because he still swings a pretty big bat. And in the locker room, players will have a listen to him. And some of the Australians respect him highly. So I'm looking at folks like Adam Scott and Jason Day and company like that. And then they go and then they tell their buds, and all of a sudden this thing kind of grows like a bit of a snowball. But again, we don't know. It's all just circumspection right now.
Yeah, I'll put a bow on this, and we'll go on to Bermuda here. I think it's interesting that they're already saying like 10 years. I thought we had a conversation earlier where they jump in, they try it for 2 years, see if they can make a big enough spark, and who knows what happens to it after that. This seems like a longer term investment, and what this might end up doing is being like, I'll give you the perfect example. It's a baseball example. The Washington Nationals 5 years ago had to overpay for free agents because that was the only way that you were going to get them to come to Washington. So what you might see is someone like I don't even know who a good example would be. Johnny Vegas getting paid an outrageous amount of money to play because they've got to pay for these mid, the 50 to 100 players, and then kind of work their way up from there. They're going to have to overpay some of these mid-tier guys. It happens in baseball all the time. That's what I imagine this could end up being.
Just real quick on the 10-year point, Rick. That to me is all it is it's an investment from a company. Right there, it's very similar to me to FedEx, the deal FedEx and the PGA Tour have. We're going to represent you and fund you, and I would imagine there's something in return. I don't know what that deal is, but that's all that is to me. We'll fund you for 10 years, and this is the deal, and we're hoping that it turns profitable for us. But then on the player side, it almost seems like you don't need to get players to choose.
I thought that too.
You don't need to get these guys to decide. Is this just going to be individual events? And hey, we got Tiger Woods this week because the PGA Tour is not at a major stop, and the tour let him go play. Or are they going to try to make this a real competitor to the tour and say, hey, in order to play on the Asian, you got to play in these 10 events, and you have to play in all 10 in order to qualify for whatever the prize fund may be. And if they do something like that, it would be much more difficult. I almost think if they do individual events, they'll get some PGA Tour players every once in a while, but not for all 10 events, not for the entire time. You're not getting people jumping ship. They're just going to get a waiver for a week.
But I think what's going to be interesting, and maybe I'm stealing Mark's thunder here, is will the PGA Tour allow them to do that? And if not, then I think all of a sudden the PGA Tour almost creates this problem for itself when DJ or JT or Rory or whoever's like, wait a second, like I can't do what? Like those guys they have so much leverage. And when the PGA Tour, obviously we're dealing in hypotheticals here, so who knows what's going to happen. But if DJ goes to the tour and it's like, hey, I want to play in Asia for, the first part of May, and the tour's like, no, you actually can't do that. That DJ is going to be like, wait, why? And then if you're the tour, are you like forcing those guys to just leave and go play there full time? I don't know, maybe not, but I think that part of it is going to be super interesting.
Last word, Mark, if you want it.
I was going to say what Kyle was going to. The waiver thing is a big deal. And the players have to play. I don't know what the requirement is, the 15 events or whatever the case might be. And the stars these guys are looking at. I can see what you're saying, Rick. They're going to get maybe a Westwood or someone like this, someone who's well respected to play there. And he's going to be the lure alongside Norman to lure some other guys over there. But the guys, the top of the game, they're not looking to play more than 20 events a season. And they don't want to build in. You saw how few folks want to go to Japan for the Zozo.
And it was $10 million. It was a huge purse.
Point. So I'm keen to see if they do lure guys away from the tour to make a trip to the other side of the globe for maybe 2 weeks. I don't know. It's a big sell.
I'm sure we will have much more conversation about this as we learn more, because all we got was Greg Norman serving as commissioner, and we can kind of take it from there. But let's